Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. Asalaamu Alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah wa shukrillah. So we continue in our discussion of the Qurrat al-Absar, and we're on the section of the Khuddam al-Ahrar, so the free servants of the best of creation, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as opposed to the freed servants, the mawali, or the clients that we discussed beforehand. And so we began this section and we mentioned Anas ibn Malik al-Ansari, Sayyidina Anas, and we discussed his mother Sulaym and some of the key notable traits of her, Allah be pleased with her, as well as Sayyidina Anas. And Sayyidina Anas, he is the half-brother of Abu Umair. Abu Umair, if you remember the famous hadith, the best of creation, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, visited a household and the young boy was sad. And then he asked the parents what happened to the boy. They said his little bird died. Mata nughayruhu. And so then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes to the boy and says, Ya Aba Umair, ma fa'ala nughayr. Oh Abu Umair, what happened to the little bird? And so this Abu Umair is the half-brother of Sayyidina Anas, and through their mother, Sulaym. So Sulaym, as we said last week, the father of Anas, who is Malik ibn Nadr, he did not become Muslim. He went to Syria and died there. So Sulaym then gave her son Anas ibn Malik to the Prophet ﷺ to be his servant, and she remarries. And so she marries a man named Abu Talha, a companion named Abu Talha. He became Muslim. And so they had a son, Abu Umair. And so Abu Umair, as a little boy, when his bird died, the Prophet ﷺ gave attention to him and asked him about the bird. And the ulama have derived over 100 lessons from that hadith, of the hadith of Abu Umair. Kids having pets, asking about the states of everyone in the house, not just the adults, but the kids, teaching children about death, teaching children about the realities of faith, etc., etc. And so there's dozens and dozens of fawaid, or lessons, that were derived from this hadith. And there's a hadith in Riyadh al-Salihin of Abu Talha and Sulaym, that their child, their young boy, was very ill, and that he died. And that when Abu Talha came home, Sulaym, it's her son, who just died, and she not only bears it with patience, but she's able to inform Abu Talha in a manner that it would be easiest for him. And so she does not tell him right away. When he comes home, he says, how's the boy? She says, askan ma yakun. He's in the most sakina he's ever been in. And this is her own son. And then she prepares a good meal for him, and then she dresses herself up. The hadith says they spend the night together as husband and wife. And then after all of this, she tells him that the boy has, then she asks him, she teaches him a lesson. So she asks him, what would you say about people that gave something to borrow to another people and then asked for it back? And he said, of course, they should happily return it. And then she said that Allah Ta'ala had lent us our boy, and now He has taken him back. And this boy was Abu Umair. This young boy was the same Abu Umair whose little bird had died somewhat before that. And so Abu Talha, he was a little agitated at the fact that she didn't tell him right away. And so he goes to the Prophet ﷺ the next day. And when the Prophet ﷺ sees him, and when he informs him, he asks him, did you two spend the night together as husband and wife? And he says, yes. And he says, Barakallahu fi laylatikuma. May Allah put barakah in your night together. And they had a child from that night. And when that child was born, Sulaym instructed Anas ibn Malik. The first thing she said, don't let anyone give it anything to eat or drink or milk. Take it straight to the Prophet ﷺ. See, we talked about Sulaym's keenness, seeking the blessings of the Prophet ﷺ. She's the one that collected his blessed sweat when he would regularly take daytime rest in her home. And she is his aunt by nursing. And she is the one who would use that sweat to put on the furniture, to put on the babies, on the kids, to put on, And so, and she's the one who had the foresight to give Anas ibn Malik as a servant to the Prophet ﷺ for 10 years. And she specifically asked the Prophet ﷺ to make dua for Sayyidina Anas. And we mentioned last week that the Prophet prayed ﷺ for Anas's wealth and offspring. And that Sayyidina Anas he would have 2 harvests per year. He had over 100 children. And he lived to over 100 years old. And so, again, her keenness about this newborn baby, that she says, take him straight to the Prophet ﷺ before anyone can give it anything to ingest. So when Anas, Allah be pleased with him, brings him to the Prophet ﷺ, he asks for some dates, and he does the sunnah of tahniq. He puts some in his blessed mouth, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, chews on it, and then puts it in the mouth of the baby, and makes dua for the baby. And then he named him, and he named him Abdullah. He named the baby Abdullah. And the narrator of the hadith, he says that I saw 9 of Abdullah's children in Medina, and they were all hufad of Quran. They were all hufad of Quran. And hafid in that time meant also scholar. It was not only a reciter, but someone who is a scholar of Quran. And so the dua, the supplication of the Prophet ﷺ, Barakallahu fi laylatikuma, as well as his tahniq, the blessed saliva mixing, all of these things were the means by which Allah gave tawfiq to those children. So this is a family that they're very centered. Their whole family life, Sulaym in particular, is centered around the Prophet ﷺ. This is the way, and this is the understanding of the Sahaba, seeking his traces. This is not some sort of late innovation or just the love of the poets that they sing about. No, this is the understanding of companions. This is the understanding of Sulaym, and so it's something to take regard of. So the next one is Sayyidina Abdullah Ibn Masood. Okay, Sayyidina Abdullah Ibn Masood, and so he says, وكان من خدام الأحرار أنس بن مالك الأنصاري ثم ابن مسعود بلال. So Abdullah ibn Masood and then Bilal ibn Rabah. Abdullah ibn Masood, Allah be pleased with him, he's one of the sabiqeen, one of the first to become Muslim. Many say he was the sixth convert to Islam. He's Hudali in his tribe. So he used to be a shepherd for Uqbah ibn Abi Mu'ayt, who was one of the worst enemies of Islam. And as a young boy, he was always tending to the flock on the outskirts of Medina, and so he was not involved with the inner workings of Mecca, the things that were happening in Mecca. And so he did not really know about the news of the Prophet when he proclaimed his prophethood, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, until one day he's tending to the flock and 2 men come, and they are they have a commanding presence. And so then they ask, can we have one of the sheep for milk, because they were thirsty. And Sayyidina Abdullah, the young boy, he says, this is amana, this is something I've been entrusted with, I cannot give it. And so then it's the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr, these are the 2 men. And so the Prophet ﷺ asks, are there any young sheep that have not been, that's still a virgin, right, not producing milk? And so he brings one, and the Prophet ﷺ puts his blessed hand on the udder, and it swells up with milk. And so then he takes it for himself, Sayyidina Abu Bakr. And so Abdullah ibn Masood becomes Muslim. And so then he leaves his job of tending to the sheep, and he devotes himself to being the khadim of the Prophet ﷺ. This is from the very beginning of Islam. Abdullah ibn Masood is the khadim of the Prophet ﷺ, and he has intimate suhbah, he has intimate companionship or company with the best of creation for over 30 years. And so He's amongst the Sabiqeen al-Awwaleen, the very first to become Muslim. And he specifically has the honor, as the Khadim of the Prophet ﷺ, he has the honor of being Sahib al-Wisada. He's the one that carried the pillow of the Prophet ﷺ. And Sahib al-Na'lain, he carried the two blessed sandals of the best of creation ﷺ. And he's Sahib al-Siwak, he carried the tooth stick of the best of creation ﷺ. And he's Sahib al-Mathara, he's the one that carried the vessel that the Prophet used for his wudu and cleaning. And so he is, these are tremendous means of barakah. And Sayyidina Abdullah Ibn Masood, he is certainly of the most Mubarak people that the earth has ever seen. He used to be called Ibn Abd, which is the son of a slave's mom, And so from the outward vantage point of, society, materialistic society, he was of insignificance. He's a Hudali. He's not from Quraysh, and he's a young boy tending the sheep, and he's just this kid, the son of a slave's mother, but spiritually he is a giant. And even his physical frame, Allah be pleased with him, he was a skinny person. He was short and he was skinny. And one day when he's climbing, because he's Sahib Siwak, so he was climbing a tree once to take Siwak, the arak tree, to take the mouth stick for the Prophet ﷺ. And when he's climbing, some of his legs are exposed, the shin, and the Sahaba saw it, and they saw how skinny his legs were. And so some of them started laughing. And the Prophet ﷺ said that the two of those two legs are weightier than the Mount Uhud. They are weightier than Mount Uhud. And so on the outward, right, the normal standards of society to judge significance, what the Prophet does is he flips it, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, the low, disenfranchised, the people who are insignificant from the eyes of the world are given utmost significance through the Prophet ﷺ, through their connection with the Prophet ﷺ. And so he, early in Islam, he's the first one to recite Quran publicly in Mecca. So the Sahaba one day were saying that no one has recited Quran out loud to Quraysh, and one of us should do it. And so Abdullah Ibn Masood RAA, he says, I'll do it. And they said, no, we want someone with a strong ashira, a strong clan to do it in case it gets physical. And he says, I don't care. And Okama qal, and he goes out and he recites Ar-Rahman, Allama al-Quran, Khalaqa al-Insan, Allamahu al-Bayan. He recites Surah Ar-Rahman, and then the narration says he recited until whatever Allah willed for him to recite. And when they realized what's happening, they said, someone's reciting the speech of Muhammad, what Muhammad has brought, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They started beating him on the face. Darabu wajha, radiyallahu anhu. And finally, he was able to get out, and there was marks, bruises on his blessed face. And the Sahaba, when they saw him, they said, this is exactly what we feared would happen. And he said, I'll do it again tomorrow. And they said, no, it's done. It was recited out loud to them. And so the bravery, the Prophet said about him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, من أحب أن يقرأ القرآن غضا كما أنزل فليقرأه على قراءة ابن أم عبد. Whoever would like to recite the Quran as fresh as when it was revealed, then let him recite it on the qira'ah of Ibn Abd, of Ibn Masood. And the Prophet said about him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, خُذُوا الْقُرْآنَ مِنْ أَرْبَعَةٍ. Take the Quran from four. من ابن مسعود وأبي بن كعب ومعاذ بن جبل وسالم مولى أبي حذيفة. take the Quran from four: Ibn Masood, Uqbah Ibn Kaab, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, and Salim, the client of Abu Hudayfa. And Abdullah Ibn Amr Ibn Al-As, he says, when he relates this hadith, he would say, لا أزال أحبه بعدما رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بدأ به. He says, I can't stop loving Ibn Mas'ud after I saw that the Prophet started with him in this list. The first one to take Quran from. He said, Wallahi, Ibn Masood says, Wallahi laqad akhadtu min fi Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam bid'an wa sab'ina surah. He says, by Allah, I took from the blessed mouth of the messenger, of God's messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, 70 some odd surahs, directly from his mouth sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Wallahi laqad alima ashabul nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam anni min a'lamihim bi kitabillah wa ma ana bi khayrihim. He says, by Allah, the companions of God's messenger know that I am amongst the most knowledgeable of them, of God's book, but I'm not the best of them. But I'm not the best of them. He said in a hadith, these are sahih hadith, Wallahi alladhi la ilaha ghayru, by God whom there is none, no deity besides, ma unzilat suratun min kitabillah illa wa ana a'lam ayna unzilat. وَلَا أُنزِلَتْ آيَةٌ مِّن كِتَابِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا وَأَنَا أَعْلَمْ فِيمَا أُنزِلَتْ. He says, by God, whom there is no God besides, no surah was revealed from God's book, except that I knew where it was revealed. And no ayah, no verse was revealed from God's book, except I know for in what context it was revealed. وَلَوْ أَعْلَمُ أَحَدًا أَعْلَمَ مِنِّي بِكِتَابِ اللَّهِ تُبَلِّغُهُ الْإِبِلِ لَرَكِبْتُ إِلَيْهِ. And were if I knew of anyone more knowledgeable of God's book than me, who is within reach of a camel, of travel by camel, that camels could reach, then I would ride camels to reach him. So he's considered the most knowledgeable of the Quran. He's considered the most knowledgeable of the Quran amongst the Sahaba. And in terms of his closeness to the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari was one of the two sent to Yemen by the Prophet ﷺ. Him and Sayyidina Mu'adh ibn Jabal, they were sent to the Yemen as ambassadors. And so when they returned, he says, قَدِمْتُ وَأَنَا أَخِي مِنَ الْيَمَنِ. He says, Abu Musa says, when I returned, me and my brother from Yemen, فَمَكَثْنَا حِينًا ما نرى إلا أن عبد الله ibn Masood رجل من أهل بيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. He says, we came back from the Yemen and we stayed some time and we couldn't see it other than as if Abdullah ibn Masood was from the family of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. لما نرى من دخوله ودخول أمه على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. Because of what we saw that he and his mother were entering the home of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم so much. They were entering the home of the Prophet so much, it was as if they said it's their family. And the Prophet told them, you don't need permission when you enter my home. To Abdullah ibn Masood, he did not need permission to enter. Hudayfa al-Yaman, he says, لَقَدْ عَلِمَ الْمَحْفُوظُونَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ مُحَمَّدٍ صلى الله عليه وسلم. Those preserved amongst the companions of the Prophet ﷺ realize أن Abdullah ibn Masood min أقربهم عند الله وسيلة يوم القيامة. They realize that Abdullah ibn Masood is of the closest of the companions to God on the Day of Judgment as a wasila, as a means. And Sayyidina Umar, when Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masood once spoke to him and left, he said, Kunayf mulya ilma. He said he's a container just filled with knowledge, filled to the brim with knowledge. And the Prophet said about him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, رَضِيتُ لِأُمَّتِي مَا رَضِيَ لَهُمْ ابْنُ أُمِّ عَبْدٍ وَكَرِهْتُ لِأُمَّتِي مَا كَرِيَ لَهَا ابْنُ أُمِّ عَبْدٍ. I am content for my ummah whatever Ibn Masood is content with, and I dislike for my ummah whatever Ibn Masood dislikes. Now, one of the beautiful things about all of these narrations is that Ibn Masood is the founder of the madrasa of Kufa. And so he is considered the most knowledgeable of the companions of God's book, and he spent arguably the most time with the Prophet ﷺ from the very beginning, with him even in the home, entering and leaving as he pleases, accompanying him, carrying his siwak and wudu vessel and na'alain, sandals, etc. And one of the things about Sayyidina Ibn Mas'ud's personality is that he was too fearful to relate hadith, ascribing it to the Prophet ﷺ. This is known about his personality, is that he was not comfortable saying Qala Rasulullah. Okay, Ibn Mas'ud's personality, he was not comfortable. So what would he do? He would answer questions as fatwa. And no other companion would give fatwa when he was around. None of the companions gave fatwa when Ibn Mas'ud was around. And so he would give fatawa, he would answer questions of fiqh, and even though much of it might have been hadith that he heard, because it's not, someone who spent that much time from the very beginning in every circumstance, in every situation, public and private, in the very home of the Prophet ﷺ, who other companions considered to be Ahl Al-Bayt, from the family, certainly he would have been quoting ahadith, plentiful ahadith when answering questions. But his want was to just say, here, this is what I think, just give the fatwa. This is the fatwa, because of the fear of misascribing something to the best of creation, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so the fiqh that develops in Kufa, even though on the surface it seems like it's opinions of companions and their students, the people of Kufa, the scholars of Kufa, understood it to be akin to a hadith. They understood the Kufan fiqh to be akin to prophetic narrations, because it goes back to Sayyidina Ibn Masood. And the other main companion who was there at Kufa, who was also an eminent scholar, is Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, who we also know how close he was to the Prophet ﷺ. And so these two are considered the founders of the Kufan madrasa, the Kufan school of law. And now who emerges 50 or so years after Ibn Masood in Kufa to codify that law? An-Nu'man ibn Thabit, Abu Hanifa. Okay, Abu Hanifa, Al-Imam Al-Azam, the greatest imam, according to all the other mujtahids. So Imam Abu Hanifa, again, he emerges from this intellectual milieu. He emerges from the Kufan madrasa, and he's inheriting the fiqh of Kufa that goes back to Sayyidina Abdullah Ibn Masood. And so although he obviously had a very deep intellectual framework for law, with his own methodology, his own usul, his own approaches, foundational approaches to deriving law, qiyas and istihsan, and the place of weak hadith and the use of mursal hadith, etc. It's not, although people use the term Ahl Al-Ra'i as a pejorative term, that's not a fair, to use that as a blanket term, Ahl Al-Ra'i. They're just Ahl Al-Ra'i. They're just people of opinion. This is not fair, because you're not considering the inherited fiqh that they received, which ultimately goes back to the companion who's the most scholarly of Allah's book, and arguably who spent the most time with the Prophet ﷺ, and who took the most in terms of knowledge. So even though they might not have been quoting hadith, it ultimately a large part of it goes back to Ibn Mas'ud, who preferred to give fatwa rather than quote hadith. Bismillah. So I had to put the plug in for the Hanafi school. couldn't resist. So Ibn Masood, Allah be pleased with him, that gives us a glimpse to his, and he died while reciting Quran, and they asked him, are you going to leave any money for your daughters? And he said, I taught them to recite Waqi'ah every night. And from the hadith that whoever recites Waqi'ah every night, then Allah will take care of their provision. So he didn't even leave. Alhamdulillah. He died in the year 32 or 33 of the Hijrah. And he's buried in Al-Baqi'. Okay, the next Khadim is Sayyidina Bilal Ibn Rabah, okay, the Mu'adhin of the Prophet ﷺ who gave the adhan. And he's Al-Habashi, he's Abyssinian. He's the Mawla of Abu Bakr. He's the freed slave of Sayyidina Abu Bakr. So when he was being tortured by Umayyah bin Khalaf, and he was courageously saying, Ahad, Ahad, one without partner, refusing to succumb to the torture, then Sayyidina Abu Bakr purchased him from Umayyah and then freed him. So he's the Mawla of Abu Bakr, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He was there at Badr and Uhud and all of the battles, and he was also specifically put in charge of giving the nafaqat of the Prophet ﷺ to his wives. Sayyidina Bilal was the one to give the money, the maintenance money to all of the wives. So he had that honor. And we also know, of course, that he is the honor of the one who climbed the Kaaba after Fath Makkah to give the adhan. After the death of the Prophet ﷺ, he could not remain in Medina. It was too difficult for him because of his longing for the Prophet ﷺ. And so after some time of living outside of Medina, he had a dream of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Jafota anna ya Bilal, you've been distant from us, O Bilal. And the second night, same dream, Jafota anna ya Bilal, you've been like distant, not as close. Third night, Jafota anna ya Bilal, you've been distant. And so he realized, and so he went back to Medina. And when he went back to Medina, Hassan and Hussein insisted that he give the adhan, and he wasn't comfortable giving it. He never gave the adhan since the Prophet left this world, ﷺ, but they insisted. And when he started giving the adhan, then all of Medina remembered. They all came out, and they thought the Prophet came back, ﷺ. Hearing Sayyidina Bilal give the adhan, they actually thought he came back. And so you can imagine what was happening in their hearts when they heard him say, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah in the adhan. So that's something about the companions we don't realize is their love for the Prophet ﷺ. This is not simply religion as a subject of study, like you go to the university, learn about the rules, and then come home and try to implement them. This was ultimately a love affair. When it comes to the Prophet ﷺ and the companions, it's a love affair. It is they were madly in love, and this informed their the depth of their wholehearted commitment to the Prophet ﷺ. Sayyidina Umar used to say, Abu Bakr Sayyiduna wa a'taq Sayyidana. Sayyidina Umar used to say, Abu Bakr is our master and he freed our master, referring to Sayyidina Bilal. No. And he has we'll discuss more of Sayyidina Bilal because he comes up again in the text under the those that gave adhan, the mu'adhins. But in this context, we're discussing he's the khadim. He's one of the khuddam. And the next one, wa Abu Dharr Al-Ghifaari. Abu Dharr Al-Ghifaari. His actual name, there's some discussion on it, but the most well-known opinion is that it's Jundub ibn Junaada. Jundub ibn Junaada is the name, but he's more well known as Abu Dharr Al-Ghifaari, Allah be pleased with him. And he's from Bani Ghifar, which is an outlying tribe outside of Mecca. And what were Banu Ghifar famous for? Raids. They would hold up the caravans and plunder them. Bismillah. So when Abu Dharr became Muslim, he became Muslim early in Mecca. He heard about the Prophet ﷺ. So he sent his brother. He said, find out if this is true and what's going on. And his brother went to Mecca, and things were very tense in Mecca at that time. And so his brother sort of laid low and figured out what was happening, came back and said that, he said, what did you find out? He said that, well, he's preaching makarim al-akhlaq, and his speech does not resemble poetry. Those are two things he noted. He's teaching virtue ethics, and his speech has no semblance of poetry. It does not resemble poetry at all. So Abu Dharr wasn't satisfied. He had to go in himself, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and he kind of goes incognito, and he's a stranger. He doesn't really, because it's very tense for the Quraysh were, actively trying to stop it in that stage. And Sayyidina Ali encounters him and just invites him to his house without asking who he is, what he's seeking. He just finds this stranger, a traveler, and he says, come over, and he has him stay in his home. And he does that for 3 nights in a row without asking who he is, what his business is in Mecca, which also shows us the hospitality of these masters. Sayyidina Ali, the famous the ayah in Surah Al-Dahr that they give from their wealth. Ala hubbihi miskina wa yatima wa asira. What's the ayah? ويطعمون الطعام على حبه ويطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما وأسيرا. And they give food out of love, and there's 2 tafsirs. Out of love, despite their love for the food, they give it, or على حبه أي حب الله, out of love of Allah, they give it. So they feed out of love of what they're giving, or love of Allah. Miskinan, the poor, wa yatiman, the orphan, wa asira, the prisoner. And this came down because of Sayyidina Ali, because he and Blessed Lady Fatima alayhi salam, they were fasting, and then when it came to iftar time, they had a little bit of food. Knock on the door, it's a miskin, it's a poor person. So they give their iftar over and they go to sleep hungry. The next day they're fasting a second day. It's optional fasting. They're fasting a second day, and they have a little bit of food for iftar. Knock on the door, it's a yatim, it's an orphan. So they give the food away again. They go the second day without eating. Third day they're fasting again for the sake of Allah. Optional fast. And at Maghrib time, there's a little bit of food ready for iftar. Knock on the door, it's an asir. An asir is a prisoner of war, meaning non-Muslim. This is in Medina, a non-Muslim. And asking for food, and they give it to him. And so Allah revealed regarding this that وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. So Sayyidina Ali, he had that prophetic Jude, prophetic hospitality. So he takes care of Abu Dharr for 3 days. Finally he asks, what are you here for? He says, I'm here, I heard about the Prophet. He said, oh, that's God's messenger. It's for real. Come on, let's go. And so he goes, he meets the Prophet ﷺ, and he takes his shahada. And it's amazing because they ask, where are you from? He says, I'm from Banu Ghifar. And they're like, these are the plunderers. These are the, subhanallah. Isn't Allah amazing how he guides whom he wills? And so then the Prophet instructs him ﷺ, to go back to Banu Ghifar and give da'wah. And it's also interesting that because a lot of people of Banu Ghifar become Muslim. And so Islam does very well with prior criminals. It's true. People who were in the lowest states doing very vile things, they have the potential to become saints. this is how we have to see people who are, no matter how bad they are or how bad they're, because a lot of times it's their circumstances, but people that have gone through that, when they embrace the truth, their hearts are pure. And you read the biographies of the early, both from the beginning, from the Sahaba, they were burying their daughters alive, they were killing each other for no good reason, they were doing all of these things of Jahiliyyah. And who do they become? They become Umar ibn al-Khattab, Abu Dharr Al-Ghifaari. They become these people. Allah be pleased with them. But then even afterwards, you read the early biographies of the Salaf. Many of them were engaged in low things before they become Muslim. And even some of them, as Muslims, were in the ditch, in the spiritual ditches, and Allah lifts them up through the Quran. So people that were highway brigands become awliya. You read the biography of some of the awliya, they used to be this one was a highway brigand. One of them, they say he was climbing a tree looking into the house of a woman. It's like medieval porn. That's what it is. It's medieval. That's what he was climbing a tree looking into the house of a woman. And he hears the ayah. Someone recites, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَمَا نَزَلَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ. Isn't it time for the believers that their hearts soften to the remembrance of Allah and what Allah has revealed of truth? And he says, آن الوقت, it's time. Literally, while on that tree doing the haram, the time has come. And he becomes one of the greatest awliya of this ummah. And so the people, this is important in terms of our context, going to the disenfranchised people who, and in our, like we just celebrated Malcolm, rahimahullah. Read about him before his Islam. He said he was on the streets, he felt like an animal. He could just kill anyone. And look what he becomes. I mean, who has done more for Islam in America? Rahimahullah. So these are important things to, and there's many examples of. So Abu Dharr Al-Ghifaari. Abu Dharr was known for zuhud. He was completely detached from he did not want dunya. And zuhud is defined as a detachment of this world from the heart, that the heart is not attached. But Abu Dharr was so keen on avoiding dunya, he didn't even want it in his hand. And he was actually very frustrated at some of the companions who, after some of the expansion of Islam, that they got wealth, he was uncomfortable with that, and he refused to take any wealth. So he was well known for zuhud, and he was also well known for sidq, honesty, truthfulness, as well as tawadu, humility. These are three of the most salient traits of Abu Dharr: zuhud, sidq, and tawadu, detachment from this world, honesty, genuine truthfulness, and humility. And the Prophet said about him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ما أقلت الغبراء ولا أذلت الخضراء من رجل أصدق من أبي ذر. The sky has not covered, nor has the earth held up a man more truthful than Abu Dharr. And in one narration, من ذي لهجة أصدق من أبي ذر, from a speaker who's more truthful than Abu Dharr. And the Prophet also said about him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is in Tirmidhi, Abu Dharr says, قال لي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, the Messenger of God said to me, ما أضلت الخضراء ولا أقلت الغبراء من ذي لهجة أصدق ولا أوفى من أبي ذر. This is what we just said, that the sky has not covered and the earth has not held up a speaker who is more truthful or fulfilling of vows than Abu Dharr. And then he says, so Abu Dharr yamshi fil ard In one narration, Abu Dharr yamshi fil ard bi zuhdi Isa ibn Maryam. Abu Dharr treads on earth with the zuhud of Jesus, the son of Mary. Abu Dharr treads on earth, the Prophet said about him, with zuhud, detachment from this world, a detachment like Jesus, the son of Mary. When we know Sayyidina Isa, he was so detached from this world. He had no material possessions. According to even the Bible, he never got married. And there's one narration, he was sleeping. He didn't have a pillow. He used to use a brick for a pillow. And so one day, Satan appears to him and says, "What is this comfort you have?" And so he got rid of the brick. That's the zuhud of Isa alayhi salam. And the Prophet said, Abu Dharr has that zuhud. Abu Dharr has that zuhud. And in one narration, the Prophet says, in the Musannaf ibn Abi Shayba, "Man sarrahu an yandur ila tawadu' Isa ibn Maryam falyandur ila Abi Dharr." Whoever would be delighted to see the humility of Jesus, then let him look at Abu Dharr. Whoever would be delighted to actually see the humility of Jesus alayhi salam, let him look at Abu Dharr. And Abu Dharr relates, Allah be pleased with him, no. Sayyidina Ali, he says, "Wa'a ilman shahihan harisan, shahihan ala dinihi harisan ala al-ilm." He says Abu Dharr he contained knowledge like a container, and he was stingy and avid. He was stingy and avid. He was stingy for his religion, meaning he wouldn't let any dunya get in to take it from him. And he was avid for knowledge. He was avid for knowledge. And Abu Dharr said, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Sayyidina Ali said, in Tabaqat of Ibn Sa'd, he says, "لم يبق اليوم أحد لا يبالي في الله لومة لائم غير أبي ذر ولا نفسي." He says, there does not remain anyone today who does not care 2 cents if anyone blames him with respect to Allah. As long as he's doing what Allah wants, he doesn't care if any blamer were to blame him. There's no one like that today except for Abu Dharr and myself. Sayyidina Ali said. And Abu Dharr says in Musnad Ahmad, "بايعني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم خمسا وواثقني سبعا وأشهد علي تسعا." He says the messenger gave me, I gave him bay'ah with 5 conditions, and then I made a covenant with 7 conditions, and then he made me bear witness to 9 conditions. أن لا أخاف في الله لومة لائم, that I not fear with respect to God the blame of any blamer. And then فدعاني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال هل لك إلى بيعة ولك الجنة. The Prophet said to him, he invited him, "Would you like to give bay'ah and you shall have paradise?" I said, "Yes." وبسطت يدي, so I brought out my hand, opened my hand. فقال رسول الله وهو يشترط علي. So the messenger said, and he was listing these conditions, one of them, أن لا تسأل الناس شيئا, you don't ask people for anything. You can't ask people for anything. Specific instructions for Abu Dharr. He said, "Naam." I said, "Yes." He said, "Wala sawtak in yasqut mink," not even your whip if it falls from you. "Hatta tanzila ilayhi fata'khudha," rather you get down off the animal and you pick it up yourself. You can't even, if he's on the animal and he drops his whip or his tool or whatever, he can't even ask someone. He gave bay'ah to the Prophet. He can't even ask anyone to pick it up for him. He had to step down. This is he gave bay'ah for. This is the dignity of the believer, not asking people for help. In the Musnad Ahmad, Abu Dharr says, "Amarni Khalili sallallahu alayhi wa sallam bi sab'in." My Khalil commanded me to 7. And that's a point to There's this whole course, you could summarize it. What's the point of this whole course? That phrase right there. You want a glimpse to a companion's understanding. That he didn't say, the Prophet ﷺ told me. No, he says, my Khalil, my intimate, beloved friend. My intimate, takhallal in Arabic is like this. Like takhlil in wudu is when you go the fingers in between. This is yatakhallal. And vinegar is called khal, right? Because khamr, wine, when it transforms into khal, vinegar, it goes from haram to halal. It's then pure for consumption when it's transformed, because the molecules that takhallal, they've all intermingled in a new way now. So the khalil is the highest rank of friendship. And it's as if the souls have actually become one. It's as if the two souls have become one soul, and they're intertwined at every part. And so this is Abu Dharr, this is how he felt about the Prophet ﷺ. This is the sunnah of the companions, is to have this attitude for the Prophet. He says, my Khalil commanded me to 7 things. And what did he command me to? أَمَرَنِي بِحُبِّ الْمَسَاكِينَ. He commanded me to love the poor people. وَالدُّنُوِّ مِنْهُمْ. And to be close to them. To be close to the poor. وَأَمَرِنِي أَنْ أَنْظُرَ إِلَى مَنْ هُوَ دُونِي. And he commanded me to look to those who have less than me. Right? One of the most important things in terms of shukr is that whatever difficulties we're facing, whatever trials we're facing, what's an antidote so that we don't complain to Allah is to always remember people that have less. This is a sunnah, and this was one of the conditions that the Prophet placed ﷺ on Sayyidina Abu Dharr, to always keep in mind people that have less than you. وَلَا أَنظُرَ إِلَى مَنْ هُوَ فَوْقِي. And to not look at those that have more than me. وَأَمَرِنِي أَنْ أَصِلَ الرَّحِمْ وَإِنْ أَدْبَرَتْ. And that he commanded me to maintain family ties even when they turn from me. Even when my relatives, if they were to be rude and turn or do something wrong to me, to still reach out, connect with them for the sake of Allah. وَأَمَرِنِي أَنْ لَا أَسْأَلَ أَحَدًا شَيْئًا. And he commanded me to not ask anyone for anything, ever. وَأَمَرِنِي أَنْ أَقُولَ بِالْحَقِّ وَإِنْ كَانَ مُرًّا. And he commanded me to speak the truth even if it be bitter, even if it's difficult to swallow. وَأَمَرِنِي أَنْ لَا أَخَافَ فِي اللَّهِ لَوْمَةَ لَائِمٍ. And he commanded me to not fear, with respect to God, the blame of any blamer. وَأَمَرِنِي أَنْ أُكْثِرَ مِنْ قَوْلِ لَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. And he commanded me to make much dhikr of لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. There is no power and might except for God. فإنهن من كنز تحت العرش. Because truly that phrase, those words are of the treasures beneath the throne. This is from the Hadith. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله is of the treasures beneath God's throne, and it is the supreme. It's one of the supreme treasures of dhikr, because it prevents the person from relying on himself. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. There's a lot we could say for each of these masters. Alhamdulillah. Bismillah. What's the time? Okay, alhamdulillah. Tayyib, Imam Lamti says, rahimahullah, so that's the fourth. Sayyidina Anas, Ibn Masood, Bilal, and Abu Dharr. These are the fourth of the free servants of the Prophet ﷺ. The fifth one, Rabi'a Ibn Kaab, Hasabu. So, Rabi'a Ibn Kaab. Rabi'a Ibn Kaab, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he's from Bani Aslam, which is a tribe of Azd. And Azd, a famous scholar that was Azdi, is Imam Tahawi. Imam Tahawi is from Azd as well. Azd is from, they're Qahtani. So they're not Adnani, they're Qahtani. Rabi'a was of the Ahl Al-Suffa. He was of the people of the bench. The people of the bench, there was over 70 companions that were homeless in Medina that the Prophet ﷺ himself took care of. The Prophet ﷺ single-handedly took care of over 70 homeless people. Okay, he single-handedly took care of over 70 homeless people. Allah be pleased with them. They're called Ahl Al-Suffa, and so Abu Huraira was one of them. Rabi'a Ibn Kaab, this companion, he's also one of them. وَلَمْ يَزَلْ مَعَهُ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ حَتَّى قُبِضَ. He remained with the Prophet ﷺ until his demise. In the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, he says, كُنْتُ أَخْدِمْ الْمُصْطَفَى صلى الله عليه وسلم. I used to serve the chosen Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. فَقَالَ. So he said one day. Now, they say about Rabi'a that he was he had tireless devotion to serving the Prophet ﷺ. He would stay up the whole day, stay up late into the night, attending to every single need he could do for the Prophet ﷺ, day in and day out. And he said that lam yazal ma'ahu hatta qubid. He remained like that until his death. And so he would constantly, even when the Prophet ﷺ would retire, he would constantly wait to see maybe he would have another need. He would stay up outside, falling asleep, feeling so tired, just in case the Prophet ﷺ had another need. And so he was like keen on seeking every opportunity to serve the Prophet ﷺ. This is Rabi'a Ibn Kaab. And so one day, randomly, the Prophet ﷺ just looks at him and says, Salni. Ask me anything you want. Okay? If you give everything you have for the Prophet ﷺ, Allah will open a vista one day. Allah will open a vista one day, and your dua will be mustajab. Whatever you ask for, Allah will give it. This is people that put in that day in and day out, mujahada, day in and day out, struggle to serve the Prophet. And this is, okay, how do we extrapolate this for ourselves? How are we khadims of the Prophet ﷺ today? What are we doing to serve His Majesty ﷺ? This is a question we should all ask ourselves. What am I doing to serve Him ﷺ? It doesn't have to be, okay, I narrate hadith, or I have studied fiqh. It doesn't have to be traditional knowledge. Whatever capacity, wherever Allah has placed us in the world, what am I doing for the Prophet ﷺ? Ultimately, what am I doing for Allah? But with La ilaha illallah comes Muhammad Rasulullah. The two it's written on the arsh. It's not just La ilaha illallah written on the arsh. There's also Muhammad Rasulullah written on the arsh. And today, no one can enter Jannah without the second part. If someone says, I believe God is one, and they reject the Prophet ﷺ, that's not Tawheed yet. You have to have the second part. And so, what are we doing for Allah? What are we doing for the Prophet ﷺ? How are we serving Him? What's our khidmah? Everyone should ask himself, herself, what is my khidmah for the Prophet ﷺ? And to really, think deeply. And inshallah, so if we're wholeheartedly working day in and day out to do something within our capacity to serve Him, a vista will open, like it did for Rabi'a Ibn Kaab. So what happens one day? The Prophet looks at him and says, Salni, ask anything you want. Now what's interesting about this is he doesn't say Udu Allah. He doesn't say Udu Allah. He doesn't say make dua to Allah. He says, Salni, ask me. Salni, ask me. Okay? And so, فَقُلْتُ, so I asked, Rabi'a says, so I asked, أَسْأَلُكَ أَن تَشْفَعَ لِي وَتُؤْتِقَنِي مِنَ النَّارِ. I ask you to intercede for me and that you save me from the fire. Ajib. Look at the understanding of Sayyidina Rabi'a. I ask you to intercede for me and that you save me from the fire. Now obviously, does he have an aqidah problem? It's like, yeah, Sayyidina Rabi'a, with all due respect, you're a great khadim. Did any Sahaba come up to him and say, we need to correct something in your aqidah? You don't ask the Prophet ﷺ. Okay? Our duas to Allah. Didn't you get that in Islam 101 from the beginning in Mecca? Dar al-Arqam, remember? That first aqidah course, right? Yeah. And so we don't do that, asking the Prophet and He didn't have an aqidah problem. His tawheed was, mashallah, perfect. Yeah, la khaliq illa Allah. No one's doing anything anyways but Allah. No one is independently, autonomously creating anything but Allah. So this world, everything is what? A sabab. That means some asbab are stronger. Some asbab are stronger. So there's sabab qawi and sabab da'if. So what's the sabab qawi? Is that your exam is coming, or for some of you, your papers, your summaries are due next week. Sabab qawi is you've been reading, you've been putting in that work, you've been outlining, you've been asking questions, attending class, getting good rest, working hard. And so then when you write your paper, when you take your exam, it's a sabab qawi. Inshallah, Allah will create good results. That's a sabab qawi. Sabab da'if, you're out, Starbucks, Pete's Coffee. So you're awake because you're having coffee, but you're just chilling, hanging out. Then it's YouTube. After YouTube, it's a bit of Facebook, some Instagram, checking out some pictures, back to Facebook, chatting, salat time, quickly pray, I gotta get back to the internet. You know, then let's go. There's a talk. You justify. There's a talk over there. We'll go there. You're not doing your homework. You're not doing your. That's a sabab da'if. When it comes time for the paper, don't expect the karama. Right? It could happen, but so what's the strongest sabab for Jannah? Right? What's the strongest sabab? Right? So we have to follow the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the strongest, who is the one who intercedes so that Qiyamah can even begin, judgment can begin, because everyone's waiting in torture before the shafa'ah. Everyone is just waiting. Even the people destined for hell are saying, just get it started because this is too much. Even if we have to go. This is what they say. So it's the Prophet ﷺ who makes sajda, makes shafa'ah, and then with that means, Allah creates and unveils His will, whatever He had decreed of who is going to paradise, who will be forgiven and whatnot. And so the Prophet ﷺ is our sabab, he's our wasila. This is what, Allahumma rabba hadi da'wati at-tammati wa salati al-qama at Sayyidina Muhammadan al-wasila. That we ask Allah to give the Prophet ﷺ this station of wasila because he is the wasila for us to enter paradise. And so this is not an aqidah problem. He's asking him to be that wasila and to intercede for him, and because of that, Allah will save him from the fire. But it's a metaphor. You save me from the fire by interceding. Naam. Now, we're talking about asbab, sabab qawi, sabab da'if. So, look at the prophetic response. So, Sayyidina Rabi'a says, I ask you to intercede for me and that you save me from the fire. فَصَمَتَ قَلِيلًا. The Prophet ﷺ was silent for some time. He didn't say anything. He was quiet. And after some time he says, إِنِّي فَاعِلٌ فَعِنِّي عَلَى نَفْسِكَ بِكَثْرَةِ السُّجُودِ. Oh, كما قال. He says, I'll do it, but you help me against yourself. Help me against your nafs by making lots of sajda. I'll do it, but help me against your nafs, against your ego, against your soul by making plentiful prostration. Okay, so again, he's not only saying, but he's prescribing a sabab qawi. He's saying you need to do your work as well. And look at the wording, help me against your nafs. So, what are the two sides of this battle? It's the nafs and the Prophet ﷺ. It's Allah and His Messenger and the nafs. And we need to choose whose side are we on. And so we need to help Allah and His Messenger against the nafs by following the sacred law as best as we can. Naam. طيب وعقبة بن عامر وسعد ذو مخمر أسماء ثم هند. He ends this section. He says, Uqbah Ibn Amr, who is he was he's the servant of the Prophet ﷺ that would lead the mule. He would walk in front of the mule and lead it forward. of the Prophet's mule ﷺ when he would go on journeys. This is Uqbah Ibn Amr, and under Sayyidina Muawiyah he was placed as the governor of Egypt. Under Sayyidina Muawiyah he was placed as the governor of Egypt, and he died in the year 53. Saad is the Mawla of Abu Bakr. Saad is the freed slave, the client of Abu Bakr. And the Prophet ﷺ was impressed with his khidmah. His khidmah to Sayyidina Abu Bakr was so efficient and good that it impressed the Prophet ﷺ. And so he told Sayyidina Abu Bakr, A'tiqhu, he said, free him. He told him to free him. فَأَعْتَقَهُ فَلَزِمَ خِدْمَتُهُ. So then Abu Bakr freed him, and he embraced serving the Prophet ﷺ. He became a khadim, a free khadim of the Prophet ﷺ. Dhu Mikhmar. Dhu Mikhmar is another khadim of the Prophet ﷺ, and he's the nephew of Najashi. He's the nephew of Najashi. Okay, he's Habashi, he's Abyssinian. He's the nephew of Najashi, and he's the servant of the Prophet ﷺ. And Najashi, of course, is Najashi a companion? Is it pop quiz? He's the king of Abyssinia. Is he a companion? Difference of opinion? What do you think? Good. So he believed, he's Muslim, and the Prophet prayed the Salat al-Ghaib, the distant janazah for him, the absent janazah for him. But he never saw the Prophet ﷺ, so he is a tabi'i, because he saw these companions. So the Najashi is a tabi'i. Naam. He's also a tabi'i. Uwais al-Qarni is also tabi'i. Yeah. Allah be pleased with them. So, naam. And then he ends with Asma and Hind. These are two brothers. Asma and Hind are two brothers. They're the children of Haritha al-Aslami. Haritha al-Aslami. And Abu Hurairah says they were so constant at the door of the Prophet ﷺ, I realized they must have been his khadims. They were ever present outside the door of the Prophet ﷺ. There was such a persistent, normal thing that I realized they must have been khadims. And they are 2 of 8 brothers who were at the Bay'at al-Ridwan. Okay, Asma and Hind, the 2 sons of Haritha al-Aslami. They are 2 of 8 brothers, all of whom were at the Bay'at al-Ridwan, at Hudaybiyah, the pledge under the blessed tree of Ridwan. And it's called Bay'at al-Ridwan because Allah said, radiyallahu anhum, that Allah's good pleasure was on them all. No. So, do we have any questions? There's definitely overlap. So the question is, were all of these servants at the same time or different times? So, because we know Sayyidina Ibn Masood was always a servant. We know Sayyidina Anas was for 10 years. So some of them, Abu Hurairah said, I saw them always at the door. So there was a lot of overlap. The Prophet ﷺ, it was not just he had one khadim at just one time. He would have more than one. It seems like they were tasked with different duties. So, because like Sayyidina Ibn Masood, his task was specifically with the na'alain, the 2 sandals, and the siwak. And so there was, it seems like there was different tasks, and Allah knows best. Like he says, Sayyidina Bilal would give the nafaqah to the wives. That was his particular task, to give the maintenance money to the wives. No. Expenditures, no.
Yeah, the second question was, you mentioned how
Yeah. So what we said, that the believing in the Prophet ﷺ is a condition to enter paradise. First of all, we're speaking about after his coming, obviously. For other previous communities, is believing in their Prophet. And if they have no Prophet, then there's difference of opinion between the Ash'aris and Maturidis. The Maturidis would say they're still responsible for Tawheed. The Ash'aris would say they have an amnesty from Allah despite their lack of Tawheed. It doesn't matter what they believe in, because they had no message delivered from a Prophet. So when we said that believing in our Prophet is a condition to enter paradise, we mean after his advent, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as a messenger. But the question is, could someone use the hadith, Man qala la ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah, as a proof against that? Whoever says la ilaha illallah enters paradise. No, they could not use that, because you'd have to look at all the hadith to understand the purport of that hadith. So what does that hadith mean? You'd have to look at the entire sacred law. And the entire sacred law is very clear that one has to believe in our Prophet ﷺ. It's not sufficient. And there were people at the time who they were Hunafa, but if they did not believe in him, they weren't considered saved. So one has to believe in the Prophet ﷺ. No. And so that because it's mafhum, it's understood that what's meant is man qala la ilaha illallah, believing in the Prophet ﷺ. Right? Yeah. Any other questions? No. Sure. Sure. Inshallah. Bismillah. Go ahead, Sidi. One of the closest. We'll come back then, inshallah. So you have a question?
Just to clarify, the 7 commands to Sahaba Abu Dharr, what was the 6th one?
Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. The commands to Abu Dharr. The first one, loving poor people. The second one, being close to the poor, like actually physically spending time with them. Third, to look at those beneath one in blessings, to realize what one has, and to not look at someone above one, someone that has more. And that's in that context, it's material blessings. Because for spiritual blessings, you do the opposite. You look at people that have more so that you can emulate them. But in terms of, the next one, to maintain family ties, even if they don't. The next one, to not ask anyone for anything. The next one, to speak the truth, even if it's bitter. The next one, to not fear the blame of anyone with respect to Allah. And then lastly, to make much remembrance of La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. No.
Has there been any explanation or anything, any indication that it came from Prophet in terms of the people that was selected as for them, for particular duties, why is it that they were the ones that were actually selected?
Why they were selected for those duties?
For those duties over the other companions?
That's a really good question. So, I don't know. I'm sure there's discussions of that. Certainly, Ibn Masood is very interesting because he had duties that are very significant in understanding just the idea of tabarruk, of seeking the blessings of the Prophet ﷺ. So the na'layn are very significant, the sandals are very significant, and the siwak is very significant, and so it's just interesting that he did emerge as arguably the most eminent scholar of the companions. It's arguable. He's in the conversation, and many other companions felt that way, that he was the most knowledgeable. And it's interesting that historically it is the school of law that is most widespread in Islamic history, geographically over time, is the school that ultimately goes back to Ibn Masood. And so, I'm sure many of our masters would say there's a connection there, and Allah knows, But yeah, I don't have knowledge of that, of details of that. Any other question? Alhamdulillah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember my question, you were mentioning how, you were just mentioning Ibn Masood radiallahu anhu, and I think maybe I missed something, but you said he was the closest to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The companions considered him the closest to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a means. And I was wondering if you could explain that a little more.
As a means?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I'm not sure what. Oh, the hadith. Okay, sorry. Yeah, there was a hadith we quoted. Naam. It makes more sense in Arabic to me. The question is regarding the hadith. Hudayfa al-Yamani, Allah be pleased with him, says, لَقَدْ عَلِمَ الْمَحْفُوظُونَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ مُحَمَّدٍ صلى الله عليه وسلم أن عبد الله ibn Mas'ud من أقربهم عند الله وسيلة يوم القيامة. Those preserved, the mahfudun amongst the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, knew with certainty or realized that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud was of the closest to them with Allah as a wasila on the Yawm al-Qiyamah. So we believe that others will get shifa as well. The intercession, Allah will grant that not only to our Prophet ﷺ, but many other people. And so it seems that the Hudayfa was saying that they felt that Sayyidina Ibn Mas'ud would be one of them. Sayyidina Ibn Mas'ud would be one of them as a wasila on the Day of Judgment, a means to Allah, a means to Allah's forgiveness. Because when someone, and there's hadith about like a qari, the hafidh of Quran, and different people that they're able to intercede for their loved ones, for their relatives, the martyr, the baby that dies, right? One of the consolations Islam gives to people who, if their baby dies at a young age, is that the child will intercede for the parents. He will be unhappy unless Allah frees the parents from the fire. So there's a lot of proofs that the different shifa, there's lesser shifa'as, lesser intercessions that are granted to people. And one of our teachers, when we were studying, when you learn a particular madhab, one of the concerns is, can I leave that madhab and take an opinion from another madhab? There's conditions for that. It makes things easier sometimes. And so some of the younger scholars and teachers are stricter, and one thing you'll notice is that as they get older, they kind of become a little more relaxed with these things. I mean, there's dawabit, there's rules. It's not just an open door, but so one of the elder scholars we were blessed to study with, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Al-Ani rahimahullah, he passed away. He's someone asked him in the dars, after the dars, they said, if is our accountability based on our school? Is our accountability based on our school? So if you're a Hanafi, then your accountability based on, or accountability based on if you're Maliki, etc. He said it's not accountability, it's intercession. He said when you're part of a madhab, it's not the matter of accountability, but rather that's who your wasila will be. Wallahu a'lam. So this is an insight that he had as a realized scholar, that your imam will inshallah intercede. Online questions. Number 1, how do we get to Jannah? Allahu Akbar. Yeah, inshallah, take the means and trust in Allah. Yeah, i'qil wa tawakkal. Tie the rope and rely on Allah. So, inshallah, follow the Sharia and rely on Allah. What was the relationship between these servants and the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, given that they were in the household? So, obviously, with all the rules of the hijab, all the rules of the hijab were being implemented, but they were coming in when it was appropriate. how can we try to explain why Islam did not forbid slavery but only praised freeing slaves? So we talked about this last week, and basically we said that, if you look, that institution was so ingrained in human civilizations, in human societies, that it would have been very difficult to just uproot it all at once. But rather it opened doors for freeing slaves, and it closed doors for taking new slaves. So the only way a new slave could be taken after Islam came is as a captive of war. Which, if you look at the rules of the Sharia of how to treat a slave, an owned slave, okay, like we quoted today, Sayyidina Ali, an asir came, a prisoner of war came asking for food, and he fed him, right? And there's rules about treatment. They cannot be abused. A slave, of course, has to be taken care of, food and shelter, and even tarbiyah, ta'lim, they have to be educated, okay? You ask some inmate, any inmate that's been in prison for 20 years, 30 years, what would they rather have? Do a census, just do what's the word I'm looking for? Survey. Do a survey and look at the answer. Show them on what Islam allows for the rules. Any punishment, any physical beating, torture is amongst the kaba'ir. It's an enormity in Islam of an owned slave. They have to be taken care of, well-fed. All they have to do is the chores of whatever that they're, and then they're taking care of their food and whatnot is taken care of. Ask them, compared to prison life, what would they have? What would they rather have? Do that survey. See what would happen. So, which society has the moral ground to question even Islam's practice of slavery? And so it's this problem of equivocation. The word slavery brings to our mind brings the images of our mind what we understand from what happened in the West in the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries, particularly to African Americans. But that certainly wasn't the reality of slavery in Islam. And so it's important to keep that distinction in mind. The last question is the lifestyle of Sayyidina Abu Dharr, Allah be pleased with him, one to take as an example for Muslims today, because he was not in the world. So most of us are too weak for his level of zuhud. And so what we were taught is that we should have zuhud in the heart while having possessions in the hand. This is the sunnah, is that you can have things in the hand and have a fruitful life, and everything in moderation, right? And so there's a hadith, Allah loves to see the trace of His blessings on the servant. It's Inna Allah yuhibbu an yara athara ni'matihi ala abdihi. Allah loves to see the traces of His blessings on His servant. And the Prophet ﷺ, so one can have comforts and things of this world in moderation, without going to either excess, but it should never be in the heart. Zuhud is ultimately in the heart. It's not in the definition of zuhud is that the heart is freed, so that if there's a calamity, if something happens to what happens in the hand, the heart is still with Allah. The heart should be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's many huge shuyukh that are both in contemporary times and in the past that were extremely wealthy, very wealthy. Wealth is not seen as an evil thing in Islam. Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam was the wealthiest, arguably ever in the world, but he had zuhud, and Allah praises him as what? Ni'mal abd. Ni'mal abd. What a great slave! What a great servant! What a great servant of Allah! And Sayyidina Ayyub alayhi salam, who had some of the most difficulties in terms of wealth and health and family, he is also praised as what? Ni'mal abd. What a great servant. And so the outward circumstances were night and day difference, but the hearts were with Allah. The hearts were with Allah. And so they were both people of zuhud. They were both people of zuhud, because nothing of that dunya was in their hearts. And so this is the zuhud that we should focus is what's the heart, what's happening in the heart, and feeding one's family, for example, taking care, the Prophet said sallallahu alaihi wasallam that even the morsel of food you put in your family's mouths is sadaqah. And when Saad, I believe Ibn Abi Waqqas was, or Ibn Mu'adh, I forget, I'll have to check. When one of the Saads was on his deathbed and he wanted to give all his money or a good portion of it for charity, the Prophet said, no less. He said, can I give 2/3? No less. Half? No less. 1/3? He said, ath-thuluth, wa thuluth kathir. He said, 1/3's the most you can give, and even that's a lot. And he said, for you to leave your dependents after you, with something is better than leaving them hungry asking people for money. And he told Abu Dharr, never ask anyone for anything. So one has to keep that in mind. And so, it's a sunnah of every prophet to work for a living. It's a sunnah of every prophet to have a profession. So to work, to earn, to take care of one's family, to leave something for them so that they don't have to ask others is all sadaqah, it's all ibadah, as long as one doesn't have it in their heart. And Allah knows best. Naam. Anything else, inshallah? Yeah, sure. Four names to take the Quran from: Ibn Masood, Uqbah Ibn Kaab, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, and Salim, the Mawla of, who is he the Mawla of? Abu Hudayfa. No. Yeah. Ahlan wa sahlan.
Is there a significance to the number 70? The Prophet said he took care of 70 households, and then we've seen more narrations that contribute to that number 70, like also with Talha, and then Prophet repeated more than 70 times.
Right.
MashaAllah.
I'm sure there's a lot of insights with numbers. So the question is there significance to the number 70? The Prophet ﷺ took care of over 70 of the Ahl Al-Suffa. I haven't studied those kind of insights, so I can't say anything, But there's different numbers have significance. Like 313 is the number of messengers. It's also the number of Ahl al-Badr, for example. And so they have, 4 is a number, and they have different numbers that they've drawn insights from, but I don't have too much knowledge of those things. So, Allahu A'lam. Yeah. Anything else, inshallah? طيب وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله